right, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I see that we have Supervisor Alcorn on, so I'll invite him to open up our meeting for us if he wants to.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just very quickly, appreciate everybody's patience and understanding as we do this redo of this meeting on this nomination to change the comprehensive plan. So I am going to be listening, watching, and happy to field any questions that come up, but look forward to hearing from staff and also from the nominator. And hopefully for those of you that were on the canceled meeting, there I know was some good discussion and some initial issues that were raised, and hopefully this meeting will be an opportunity to move forward on any of those. So anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight to discuss the Roland Clarke Place Comprehensive Plan Amendment. I'm Heather Springs. I'm a planner with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. I'm accompanied tonight by Clara Johnson and Kazi Mohammed, who are also with the Planning Department. This meeting was previously scheduled for August 27th, as the supervisor stated. Due to an issue with the Zoom link, there was some difficulty for people getting into the meeting. So for those of you that were able to reach out to me and get a corrected link and get on with us, I really appreciate you guys' time. And thank you for the supervisor and staff who were able to join and rejoin tonight. So tonight we're going to be talking about the plan amendment and what's being proposed to change. I'm going to present the current comprehensive plan guidance and staff considerations throughout the plan amendment study. Then I will introduce the representative from the developers to present their proposal and concepts. At the end of the presentation, I'll provide next steps of the plan amendment and conclude by opening up the meeting for discussion. We do ask that you please stay muted through the presentation. If you have any questions or comments as we go through, you're welcome to put them in the chat to the host, who will be able to monitor. We're going to be talking about changing land use guidance in the comprehensive plan for Roland Clarke Place. So before we go on, it's important to understand what the plan is and how we use it. Let's watch this 3-minute video about the county's comprehensive plan. Can everyone hear that?
Hi, welcome to our Planning 101 video series featuring short videos on long-range planning in Fairfax County. In this series, we'll be taking you through terms and documents that are important to long-range planning and how our residents can participate in the process. So let's get started. Do you ever wonder what determines the pattern of development in a community? Sure, people buy land and build houses, businesses, hotels, and other types of buildings. But what determines what goes where? Well, if you live in Fairfax County, you can start by looking at the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan identifies county priorities for land use and is a guide for decisions that impact the built and natural environment. That includes what types of development are recommended where, how intense those developments might be, ensuring Fairfax County has long-term plans that promote livable, prosperous, and equitable communities. The foundational guide for all development and growth in the county, the one big long-term plan that guides it all, is the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. The comprehensive plan is, yes, required by state law, and it is also used as a guide for decision-making about how land is developed and used, a reference for the public on strategic goals when it comes to development in the future of the county. The comprehensive plan includes general county-wide policy recommendations for land use, housing, heritage resources, the environment and sustainability, public facilities like schools, fire stations, and parks, and transportation systems, including roads, trails, and transit, among other topics. It also includes 4 area plan volumes. Those area plans include recommendations organized by 4 geographical areas in the county. These recommendations give guidance on how land could be used in the future. But we should make it clear, the plan does not determine when or what developments will actually happen. The comprehensive plan also includes a plan map that shows recommended land uses throughout the county. Think of the comprehensive plan as a general guidance for land use, which creates the vision for the future of the county. While we have an idea of the types of uses that are preferred for the different areas of Fairfax County, it's up to the board to approve proposals to implement the plan. With the comprehensive plan, Fairfax County has a layout and a map for the future. It provides an outline for the Board of Supervisors, and neighborhoods and communities have guidelines for what can be developed and how residents in the community's priorities can be met. The comprehensive plan provides a roadmap for how the place where you live and work could change in the future. It helps guide development for the benefit of current and future residents, workers, and visitors. Thanks for watching our first short video on long-range planning. Stay tuned for more videos and to learn how you can get more involved.
All right, so in the video, she showed this map, and I want to take a minute to talk about what that means for this area. An important component for the comprehensive plan is the concept for future development map, which is the overarching guide for land use in the county. Put simply, it provides a general framework for thinking about where most of our growth is encouraged. Wheelie, Reston East, which is circled on the map, is identified as a transit station area, or TSA. Transit station areas are areas in the county directly influenced by the presence of a metro station, and are those areas where the comprehensive plan encourages growth and a mix of uses in a pedestrian-friendly form that supports the metro rail system. Floor area ratio, or FAR, is the term most used to describe intensity of development. To calculate FAR, you divide the floor area of building space by the land area in a development site. The lower the number, the less intense the development. Let's take a look at an example. A 1 FAR, like what's shown on the slide, would be a 100,000 square foot building on a 100,000 square foot parcel. This building could take a variety of forms. Hypothetically, a 1-story, 100,000 square foot building could cover the entire parcel, or a 2-story building with 50,000 square foot floors could cover half of the parcel. The subject property is generally located north of Sunrise Valley Drive, south of the Dulles Toll Road, at the northwest end of Roland Clarke Place. This site is developed with a 90,000 square foot multi-tenant office building. The site is located in the Wheelie Transit Station area. The adjoining parcel to the east was redeveloped as a multifamily use. The parcels to the south and the southeast are redeveloped townhomes. And the Reston Heights development to the west is developed with a condo building, hotels, an office building, and a new multifamily building. 1950 Roland Clarke Place is currently planned for residential mixed use at an intensity of up to 3.55 FAR. Residential mixed use is defined in the Reston plan as a mix of existing office uses with residential and commercial uses. In the 1980s, this area was redeveloped as an office park. Then in 2008, a site plan was approved for this parcel, the subject property, and the neighboring parcel, which is now the Point at Reston Apartments. That site plan permitted 3 new office buildings at an intensity of 3.55 FAR. This site plan was never implemented. However, the approved intensity carried over into the updated Reston comprehensive plan text that was adopted in 2015. The most recent update to the Reston plan, adopted by the board in September of 2023, restructured the transit station areas and created the Roland Clarke Place sub-district. The current comprehensive plan guidance recommends redevelopment provisions for interparcel access to the west and a public recreation component for this site. Comprehensive plan guidance for this transit station area includes 2 designations with ratio guidance for development. The residential mixed-use designation calls for a 75% residential and 25% non-residential split of uses. These areas are generally beyond a quarter mile and within half a mile of the metro station. Transit station mixed-use areas are those closest to the metro station and call for a 50% residential and 50% non-residential split of uses. The proposed plan amendment considers 100% residential use on this site. So as part of the staff analysis, we reviewed land use guidance and existing development ratios. When considering the existing ratios, we analyze both existing development and development that has a zoning approval that has not yet been constructed. We found that in the residential mixed-use areas south of the toll road, it is currently a 61% non-residential and 39% residential split. If the proposed plan amendment was adopted and implemented, the new ratio for the Wheelie residential mixed-use areas south of the toll road is estimated to be 52% residential and 48% non-residential. This is consistent with the ratios that the comprehensive plan envisions for these residential mixed-use areas. We consulted with county agencies, public service, and infrastructure providers to determine what the impacts would be of the proposed development. These considerations included the mix of land uses, broader county housing goals, potential impacts of additional residential uses on the transportation network, schools, parks, and environment. We've talked about the mix of land uses in the area, and we also reviewed the surrounding uses and the comprehensive plan goals in consideration of compatibility with those surrounding uses. In consideration of impacts to the transportation network, Fairfax County Department of Transportation noted the expectations for bike and pedestrian connectivity through site improvements, as well as the inclusion of a shared use path to connect with the regional trail planned south of the toll road. Potential roadway and transportation improvements would be determined during a rezoning and built alongside development. A schools analysis indicated sufficient capacity for the proposed plan amendment intensity. When we coordinated with County Parks Authority staff, they indicated that new development would have to meet the county's urban parks framework, which recommends 1.5 acres of dedicated park space per 1,000 residents for new residential developments in the transit station area. This proposed plan amendment would warrant approximately 0.8 acres of urban park space. An environmental review of the proposed plan indicates this site will need to address residential noise in proximity to the toll road, as well as stormwater management improvements through a future zoning review. And finally, the county's land use goals and housing objectives promote new housing opportunities, particularly with access to affordability, commitments to recreation and healthy communities, and environmental sustainability. New housing at this location would meet these objectives with its proximity to metro and included open park space. All new housing developments must meet county ADU and WDU policies to provide affordable housing opportunities. Before we move into a presentation by the developer, I want to take a minute to talk about where we are in this plan amendment process. Staff has met with other agencies and interested parties and gathered comments on the proposed plan amendment through the impact analysis phase. We are now at the stage of developing a recommendation, and tonight we are meeting with you all to hear your thoughts about the proposed change to the comprehensive plan guidance. A staff report, including a staff recommendation, will be published in September, no later than September 24th. Public hearings have been scheduled for October 15th and November 18th. I'd now like to introduce the representative from Cooley, Amanda Williams, to present the developer considerations and concept plans.
Thank you, Heather. That was great. Appreciate that overview and background. So again, Amanda Williams, I'm a land use attorney with Cooley. Really happy to be here tonight to talk about the 1950 Roland Clarke Place plan amendment on behalf of the property owner, Stewart Investment Partners. And I am joined on the line here with Mike Simmons, co-founder of Stewart Investment Partners. Next slide, Heather. So as you heard, we filed this plan amendment proposal back in 2022, actually after working for many years on redevelopment options for this site. And the proposal is to modify the residential mixed use designation at that 3.55 FAR to permit redevelopment of the property with residential uses and public recreation space at a reduced 2.5 FAR. And more specifically, the owners envision are at around 2.5 FAR. And more specifically, the owners envision a redevelopment offering a multifamily building with high quality outdoor public recreation space to complete the neighborhood in this area and provide a cohesive public amenity. Next slide. So Heather did a good job giving some of the background on the comp plan, but a couple other points on this concept. So prior to the 2015 version of the comprehensive plan, the site was planned for 100% commercial. The rest and center for industry and government covenants prevented residential development along the toll road until 2011 when those were vacated. So then the 2015 comp plan sought to correct this lack of residential and recommended a 50% residential minimum for this site at the 3.55 FAR and the 75% residential and 25% non-residential for the overall residential mixed use area. The reality was at that point in time, the 75-25 split was being applied on an individual site basis and not necessarily an overall basis. And for sites like 1950 Roland Clarke, the current conditions do not justify that use mix or the level of density, which brought us to the need to file this plan amendment. Next slide. So this slide shows you a summary of what those challenges are that are necessitating a change. First, the existing building on the site is functionally obsolete at this point. It was built in the late 70s, early 80s, growing vacancy, which has frankly worsened since this nomination was filed in 2022. We are at about 40 to 50% vacancy of the space in the building at this point. This is, of course, diminishing the value of the building, which is not good for the property owner, obviously, but also not good for the county from a tax revenue perspective or for the adjacent uses, particularly as time goes on and we are really trending in the direction of the building ending up completely vacant. Demand for this type of suburban office, well, this used to be a suburban office park in this area. Now just this suburban office building has really shifted away from this type of building and towards the amenitized, walkable new spaces adjacent to the metro. Size is a concern for this site specifically. It's at the end of a road without passing car or foot traffic. And the site is also now surrounded completely by residential development with the recent redevelopment of the 3 immediately adjacent sites that those of you on the call, many of you probably live in, and I'll show an overview image in a moment. But this has really changed the fabric of the area, making it hard to pull people behind those residential developments to any commercial uses, and that would frankly bring unwarranted levels of traffic through the neighborhood. Next slide. So this image helps to illustrate the residential, as I was just mentioning, that now surrounds the site that has really changed the fabric here. So the site at the end of the Roland Clarke Place cul-de-sac there outlined in yellow, the Valley and Park townhomes to the south and the Sunrise Square townhomes, the Point at Reston directly to the east, and then the Mercer condominiums to the west. And as you can see in this overview, the area does not have much open space or recreational opportunities to speak of. So we do feel like this is a great opportunity to modify the comp plan recommendation for this site to, yes, redevelop an aging office building, but also to permit better utilization of the property for the community in this area. Next slide. As a reminder, Heather did a great job giving an overview of this, because if you aren't living and breathing this stuff every day, it's sometimes hard to understand how it all works together, but we are at the planning stage now and not the zoning stage. So this is just step 1. And I like to kind of describe the planning stage as we are really asking at this point whether putting multifamily here with meaningful public recreation space is a good idea. Nevertheless, we have been sharing potential concepts with staff throughout their review process of what this could look like and what we expect we might file with the zoning application in the future. And this shows that current concept for the proposal in the context of the neighborhood. And as you can kind of just see at first glance, we really would be providing needed open space and public amenities to the neighborhood. Also, we would have the opportunity to provide needed connectivity. The purplish line here is showing pedestrian connectivity, and the blue line is showing the intent to provide that additional vehicular connection to the west that Heather mentioned. Next slide. So this is a zoomed in view of that same plan, the different colors representing different uses. The shades of orange represent the residential multifamily portion of the building, including the amenity spaces, and the lighter orange. Exactly where those spaces would be could change, but the idea being here that they would activate the open space at the ground level, and that green is the open space, which is labeled as open space here, but would really, the idea here is this is meaningful programmed recreation, intentionally programmed recreation or open space. Along Payson's Way there, we've included plans for a pedestrian trail that will connect to the west, that will integrate well with the townhouse development that is just to the south, and our new open spaces there. The blue line again there in the back, also showing the access road that would allow vehicular connectivity to the west, and the gray is the parking garage appropriately against the toll road and matching the kind of design of that adjacent apartment building. And this generally matches the scale of that adjacent apartment building, but has been designed or conceptually designed to be more friendly to and responsive to the adjacent townhomes. And I'll show you a conceptual massing of the building in just a moment. And this design has evolved over the past 3 years in discussions with staff, and the focus has really been on the urban parks and the recreation space. So the design is now reflective of that and prioritizing that. Next slide. Here is that conceptual massing I just mentioned. So the building, as you can see here, is really set back from the townhouse development to allow for the trail and a linear park. The first arm of the building there closest to Roland Clarke Place is pulled even further back to really allow for intentional amenities right there off of Roland Clarke Place to provide this area a much more pedestrian community feel. What we're showing here, you can see various things in the open space there are just examples. Again, we're at the planning stage here, and so don't have nailed down what exactly would go there, and are definitely open to feedback about what would be most appropriate. And so we would work closely with both county staff, the Parks Department, and the community and neighbors on what this space could and should be. Next slide, and last slide, I promise. Lastly here, I wanted to highlight some of the specific community benefits that could come along with a change here. We do think this is a good opportunity to modify the plan in a way to allow redevelopment of this aging office building and allow the site to be more consistent with its residential surroundings and offer some benefits to the surrounding area. Adding the public recreation space is at the top of that list in terms of benefits, I think, but those benefits also include the connectivity I mentioned. And this would provide an opportunity to memorialize a lower density, more neighborhood appropriate development for this site than what's in the comp plan today. And we did hear some of the concerns about Roland Clarke Place specifically at our last non-meeting meeting. And this also does present the opportunity to study and ultimately make some of the needed modifications to Roland Clarke Place as a part of an ultimate zoning application. Obviously, some of these conditions are existing, but we would be expected to mitigate our transportation or our impacts generally, and would spend considerable time studying that if we moved forward to the next step, which would be a zoning application that would come after this comp plan amendment. And with that, I will kind of sum up. We're happy to have the opportunity to present and discuss this evening. I'll kick it back to Heather and Clara, and we're happy to answer questions in coordination with staff.
Thanks, Amanda. All right, so this concludes our presentation. This slide includes links to our websites to help you stay informed. We're also going to add this information into the chat so it's easy for you guys to copy. This presentation and a recording of this will be posted on our project website following the meeting. It'll probably take us a couple of days to get it up, so just bear with us. We'll now open the floor for discussion. I know we have an update that I got just before the meeting from transportation regarding some comments related to traffic calming measures, and the signalization of Roland Clarke. So if anybody has any questions, transportation is with us tonight to provide some answers to those questions. We also have a representative from our Parks Department on the call. So we're all here to hear your questions, be part of your discussion, and listen to your feedback. You're welcome to come off mute and join in the conversation. You can also continue to send messages in the chat. But I'll just lead off our discussion tonight with, does anyone have any specific questions about anything you've heard or seen tonight, or specific comments or concerns?
Hi everyone. This is Cheryl Hughes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. I live over on, and Heather, thank you for emailing me back on Friday. I never was able to get back in touch with you, but I appreciate the reply.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just going to talk for 1 minute. I've been working with Sharon and Sandra, who is next door over at the adjacent townhouses. We decided we would put out a poll to the people that live in these townhouses. And in that poll, we asked if they supported the development and also questions. So you might be surprised, but 97% of the people are not in favor of this. So whereas I hear your presentation loud and clear, and your suggestion is to make it less dense and better for all of us, we're really kind of shaken and shocked about this, and we think we have a lot of areas that need to be addressed. So I wanted to just give you the results of the poll. 97% are not in favor. And then Sharon and Sandra, what do you think? Should we just jump off with some of the questions?
Sure.
I'll start with the first one, and then we can just go in any way. And everyone that's on the call, we want you to jump in and join, but we did take your responses from the survey. So the first question I'm going to say is about traffic and safety concerns. We have a lot of questions about traffic flow, what kind of studies are going to be conducted, how we're going to have pedestrian and cyclist safety, and also, what's the capacity of the existing infrastructure, and how are we going to modify that as it becomes burdened with this new apartment building. So if anyone wants to take a step.
So this is Steve Myceros. I live on Roland Clarke Place. Well, we keep talking about parking, traffic, and pedestrians. Can we separate out pedestrians into children who board school buses? Because we're sort of lumping them in, and I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, good point.
And I'd like to know, I didn't hear the name of the person from transportation that's on, but I'd like to know at this point in time what their current view is on the situation here in this community with regards to traffic flow. Is it high? Is it low? Do they think it's currently safe for children to cross the street? Because anyone who lives on that road, it's the children are playing Frogger every morning as it is. I'd just like to have their take on it.
This is Clara Johnson from Planning and Development. I know transportation staff can talk about what that. I heard the question.
Clara, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Oh.
Heather, that wasn't just me, was it?
No, she was a little quiet.
Okay.
Okay, Okay, is this any better?
That's
Much better.
Okay, it might have been my hair in the way. Okay. I just wanted to remind people that at this stage, for a plan amendment, the question being asked is residential appropriate here? Do we have a sense of how much in terms of intensity? And so some of the studies, some of the information you're talking about, I think we do consider at this stage, but we don't have all the details that we would have once a detailed application comes in for review. But saying that, I will ask transportation staff to weigh in with what they know about the area, what they understand about the area, and what that process could look like to get some more details.
Yes. I guess I could jump in. My name is Tom Burke. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Department of Transportation, County Transportation, not VDOT. I would just say that recent comprehensive planning efforts in the Reston area, and I know John King is on here too. He's been very involved over the last several years, but then we've developed a grid of streets to aid in the flow of traffic. And I think the applicant here is also looking to help facilitate some of those additional connections to the west. In particular, we have a grid of streets identified in the comp plan that would provide additional access to Sunrise Valley to the west. I think one of the points generally lines up with the alley behind the condos to the west. And I think you'd also eventually be able to get around all the way around the hotel to the existing traffic signal. So I think once all of that comes to fruition, I think traffic will flow better because people will have more options.
Could you say
That's
a
high
little
level.
bit more? Could you say a little bit more about what the process would be? What, maybe it's not you, Tom, but what happens? What kinds of information might we get at a zoning application?
Well, there's another team at FCDOT that reviews the zonings, and they're called site analysis. And when this project and others, if there are others, come in for zoning applications, that they are tasked with taking a look at the comp plan level. We look at the future office compared to the future residential, which is why I think it's been mentioned that this proposal would actually reduce future trips. It can be a little awkward because it's probably more than what's out there now because the land isn't fully occupied. But we look 20 plus years in the future. When the zoning comes in, they'll look more at what the proposed traffic is compared to existing. So I think there'll be more of a shorter term impact type of analysis. I do not know what level of analysis will be required. The site analysis team has their own criteria, but I have to believe that it will be looked at. It has been looked at in the past. I know for the existing townhouse developments and condos, there have been transportation analyses. They've identified a potential traffic signal at Sunrise Valley and Roland Clarke. I don't believe that VDOT has been convinced that it's warranted yet, but contributions have been made between the Toll Brothers, Seekis, and I think there's a third property in the area that have contributed to a potential signal in the future. So I think that is eventually, I hate to say it, but more housing would probably bring about the need for that signal a little quicker. So that's on the table. That's something that would be looked at the zoning stage.
Okay, yeah. And I think there were some questions about pedestrian and bike safety. And I did hear the gentleman that said, and that's a distinct issue from children walking in the area. That's a different type of pedestrian.
Yeah, 100.
But maybe if we could just talk about.
Yeah, 100%. When we evaluated this proposal, we definitely looked at the existing bike and ped facilities in the area, not only on Roland Clarke, but along Sunrise Valley. We want people to be able to get around without necessarily having to get in their cars. We're all about providing alternative modes. So I think we definitely are on board, and I think we would have recommended plan text that would go along with this plan amendment that would strengthen what's probably already strong. To be honest, since the Reston plan amendment's been updated 10 or less years from, I'm pretty sure there's probably already some pretty strong bike and ped language in there, but we'd make sure that it's solid and updated as necessary. We definitely would agree that we need good shared use paths on Sunrise Valley, better facility or improved facilities in and out of the neighborhoods as well. And crossings of Sunrise Valley probably and I believe I was told today that there might be a crosswalk project on Sunrise at Roland Clarke. So we also want people to be able to get across Sunrise Valley safer, as well as the other neighborhood streets.
And I know there were some other questions there about parking and which maybe we can get to in a bit, but I would like to ask those that live in the community, experience.
Clara, we're having a hard time hearing
Again?
you again.
Jeez.
Yeah.
You
I'm
check
so
your mic
sorry.
setting.
I don't know what it is. Is this any better? Not really.
No.
Not really.
No.
So
I-
while
I-
we're waiting for Clara,
Go ahead.
is your chat open? I can't see how to post anything. Or maybe you just opened it?
The chat should be open. There wasn't anything in it yet. But
It's
everyone should be
labeled
able.
It's
The chat is
disabled. It
disabled.
says chat disabled.
While Heather looks at that, I will do my best to speak up. I feel like I'm shouting, so.
Yeah,
my
no, you're
apologies.
not shouting. That's okay.
Okay.
That's better though.
Okay. I wanted to ask the community, and I see the test in the chat. Kelly Ackerman, thank you for testing the chat. Chat's now open. I wanted to hear from the community a little bit more about what the pedestrian concerns are. I think we've heard from some in past meetings. Is it sight lines? Is it just crossing local streets? Could you tell us, maybe give us a little bit more about what you experience, what you observe out there?
Well, I think everybody's I think the problem is that the density of already what we have there with Point Reston and also the pond building, which every single day drives so many people into and out of, adding another high density building there is going to just compound what we're already experiencing, which is people speeding, they're on their phones, not paying attention. I think that's what everybody's a little bit worried about here, about you're going to be squeezing in a huge building into a space, and not really valuing, preserving peace and safety. I would like to see, and I can assure you that every person that we've spoken to would, is so against this, and we really are shell shocked at this point. And we'd like to know if there is an option for low density to preserve the peace and safety of the surrounding area, instead of putting, as I like to say, 2 pounds of sausage in a 1 pound bag. I don't know where you're going to put all this and where you think everybody is going to be going, because they won't be paying to park in the garage. So the problem is that the current situation that we have at Point Reston is that people are forced to pay in order to park in the garage, so they don't. So they find everywhere else to park besides in the garage. And that includes in our neighborhoods.
Can you unmute? Oh, and the other thing with that is, because all of those cars are now on Roland Clarke, we don't have the sight lines. So you get all the way down to the stop sign at Roland Clarke and Sunrise Valley, which is where children cross in the morning to get to the bus stop from the west to the east. You can't see them because cars are all the way down to the stop sign on both sides. All of a sudden there's a little one there. And you're pulled forward because it's hard to see to the east on Sunrise Valley from that vantage point. It's curved and there's some vegetation. So you really have to pull up in order to safely go west. And now all of a sudden there's a little one there. So that's a major issue today. And the person who spoke on behalf of the person who's planning this said they were going to improve traffic. I don't know how you improve traffic by adding more people by just adding one road, because now, okay, fine, we can go off to, those people could go off to the west, but that doesn't guarantee that they will. If they go to the western route and go down by the condo building there, there's no way to go east. You can only go west. And are people going to take the time to wind all the way around the back of that building and come up to the traffic light there? I don't know. I don't think so. So I don't see how this is going to get anything but horrendous. Just too many cars in a very small space. And by the way, that pedestrian path is already there.
Can I just add something, Erin, when you're done too? This is Kelly Ackerman.
Yes.
Yeah. So I live on Payson's as well, and just commenting on what I see when I leave on Roland Clarke. The problem too is that with the children there at the bus stop, Roland Clarke, people park on both sides. And from the Reston Point, the apartment building, those cars fly down Roland Clarke. They fly down Sunrise Valley. And I actually have seen like almost people turning the corner from Sunrise Valley to Roland Clarke Place on two wheels in the car. I mean, it's very dangerous. And God, I mean, thank God no child has been hit yet.
I'm gonna agree. I don't, when you talked about a crosswalk from Roland Clarke to Sunrise Valley Drive, personally, I'd love that because we used to take walks on the golf course, and for a while I would try to zip across the road, and then I went, you know, all the way up to the stoplight. But lately, I don't do it at all because people fly down Sunrise Valley Drive at 55 miles an hour. It's a 35-mile-an-hour road. It doesn't happen. And to add to Kelly's point, I mean, that is where the school bus is right there. So
The
I
school
look at the
bus,
street sign every day. It says 35, and I see people flying by, passing me, going, you know, 40, like I'm standing still. And it takes a long time to get out there. I don't know if those traffic lights gonna stop the traffic speed, but
Yeah. And the other thing is I noticed some sort of traffic study was going on along Sunrise Valley. I would say that's what it was. There were some pieces of equipment and those lines in the road just a couple days ago, I'd say. Don't know what that's about. Maybe someone from transportation could speak to that.
I'm sorry, what did you see on the roads?
Just about a couple days ago, there were some pieces of equipment all along for a certain portion of Sunrise Valley. And there were a couple of places where there were two black lines, some sort of wiring or something along the street, maybe set 2 meters apart, I'd say. 2 meters.
Yeah, it was some sort of sensor that they had in the road in several different places. I'm not sure if they were sensing just a number of cars or the speed of the cars or both.
It went all the way up to the light at where the Sheraton is.
Thomas, are you aware of any of that? Was that done by your group or a different group?
No, that wasn't, well, I can't say without a doubt that it wasn't our Department of Transportation. It sounds like it's data collection, some kind of traffic data collection. I'm not exactly sure why or for what purpose. I'd have to look into that.
And
But I'm not aware.
to that end, there was some sort of traffic study done at some point along Roland Clarke. I'm not sure the details about that. I do recall two gentlemen being down at the base at, right there with Roland Clarke and Sunrise Valley, and they were doing some sort of data collection. That's a point of problem, but also where both of the townhouse communities enter and exit the communities, trying to get out onto Roland Clarke is really, really challenging. And again, you've got the children coming from the apartment building to walk down the street to get to the bus stop, and they have to cross over that too. So again, we have no line of sight, so many cars already, and you want to add, what, 340 units? What do you say? Probably certainly a minimum of 300 cars, but it could be double that. I don't know how this works. It just looks like we're all just stuck now. I mean, we're already struggling.
Can I jump in here for a second, Clara? Or
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to point out and thank you guys for this feedback. This is just super helpful to understand the lived experience of you guys that are right here and, you know, how we can answer your questions. And so the reason somebody mentioned, you know, in my presentation saying that this offers an opportunity to enhance or improve Roland Clarke Place. And the reason I say that is because as a part of filing an ultimate zoning application in the future to implement this, which would have to be reviewed by staff in grave detail and approved by the Planning Commission and the board, we would be required to do a detailed analysis of how Roland Clarke Place functions and how folks are getting into the site at each of these points at the Roland Clarke Place and Sunrise Valley, and as well as adjacent intersections that are not you know, just that intersection. So we will have a traffic engineer that does this for a living, that is, you know, a separate entity that studies that, and we would have the opportunity to implement some of, you know, these things we're talking about that could enhance the experience on Roland Clarke, whether it is a signal at Sunrise Valley and Roland Clarke Place that would include a crosswalk, or is it speed bumps. And I know there's been some study of that already, but it would be an opportunity to see if the conditions today and what the conditions would be in the future would warrant that. Is it additional crosswalks along Roland? Like, we would be able to look and discuss all of that in detail. And so that is why, you know, was kind of my intent with that comment. And I'll note, I do know that there is already a trail along Payson's Way. We would be enhancing that. The idea is there's some of the grade there is kind of interesting. So we would be enhancing that and as a part of providing kind of the linear park and the rest of the park amenities there.
And would that study also look at how construction vehicles will enter and exit? We have all of that to add. Just if, let's say, before the building were even here, we have that piece to deal with of large vehicles coming in. We already have these safety concerns.
We would certainly look at that. I believe one of the existing, so the zoning application for the point included this adjacent site. It just didn't add any additional new development on it. We would be, you know, amending that to implement this if this were to move forward. And I believe there was some construction management as a part of that approval, but we would certainly look at that again. And do we need to incorporate additional commitments as it relates to how construction vehicles would access the site? Yes, we would certainly look at that.
I wanted to just acknowledge some of the comments that are taking place. There was a question about the population, and really what we have is a residential unit count. I don't think we came prepared with a population count. And the additional number, I mean, Heather, you might have some unit counts for existing. Go ahead.
For purposes of our analysis, typically we assess 1.75 persons per unit. That's how we guess and gauge how many people are going to be there. So for things like Parks calculation, we estimated between 500 and 600 new residents.
And how many units, just so that people don't
325 units.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's a comment, sight lines are a concern. Got it. Yeah, we're hearing that. They mentioned the topography. Then there's some information in the chat about traffic calming request.
Claire, could you speak up a little more?
Yes, I will.
Sorry,
shout.
just go ahead and shout.
I'll go ahead and shout. Can this land be considered to, it looks like low density? And I think that's, we're hearing, and low density, I'm assuming would be something like townhouses. I mean, the landowner can talk about what they're facing from a land use perspective. I think we're hearing what the conditions are on this site. We're thinking about what the appropriate intensity is generally, just generally. I know we like to put more housing that's somewhat walkable to transit. This is a little bit further away from the metro station. And so that's what we're thinking about, what's currently planned, and thinking about what an appropriate alternative to the current plan is. But I wanted to acknowledge that comment. Why would why would 1950 need access to Roland Clarke? Oh, okay. So this is a question about why give it access to Roland Clarke if it can have access, that alternative access behind it. I don't know if, I mean, generally we want to increase the options, but transportation staff or the developer, if you want to comment on that.
On the access piece?
Yes. Or any of it, but yes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, on the access, I don't think we would want, and again, we would study this, and it is a bit of a challenge because I understand the questions you guys have, but we are at the higher level stage where we haven't, where we haven't studied the transportation in full detail. So that is a bit of a challenge, but I wouldn't think we would want to preclude ourselves from accessing from Roland Clarke Place, but adding that additional connection to the west would provide, and I think the reality of the garage being there, and if there's traffic that's closer up to Sunrise Valley, they're going to take Roland Clarke Place to get out, and so folks from that garage in the back are just, from a human nature perspective, going to want to take that western exit to get out. Again, that part, even the directions folks take and which way traffic is coming and going, all of that would be studied. And someone's saying, I see, how long will the study take? That would be part of the zoning. We would do it as part of the zoning application, which would take that whole process, would be, likely around a year. And we would have that study submitted when we would apply for the zoning request, and that would be reviewed by staff. So on that piece, but as it relates to the density, we're looking at this. I think I kind of covered pretty clearly why the office does not work here, and that obviously would not be ideal for you guys from a traffic or density perspective. But in looking at the multifamily, we're working with staff and what the comp plan already kind of calls for in these transit station areas and the need for housing. And so looking at reducing the density from what is called for under the plan today, but putting multifamily is consistent with the general comp plan recommendations and the mix of uses for this area. It's also consistent with the adjacent development, and it's along the toll road. Townhouses are a little bit tougher along the toll road, just because the design of those buildings from a noise perspective. So I think it's generally under the comp plan kind of preferred to have a little bit of that higher density, this type of building along the toll road. So those are just a couple points on that.
I do want to just add that the Mercer condos, in order for those folks to access their little, what is that called? The little garage alleyway. They actually have to do a U-turn down Sunrise Valley, and they do a U-turn right at Roland Clarke in order to access their garage. Sorry, which may...
I'd like to, oh, go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, Sharon, could I ask, you mean for folks that are coming east on Sunrise Valley, is that right? They have to do a U-turn at Roland Clarke?
Yes, that is correct, sir. Yes. In order to access their parking garage is in between Valley and Park and Mercer Square there in that little alleyway.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
yeah, it often comes as quite a surprise when you're trying to turn right or even just go across to turn left from Roland Clarke, that somebody's actually doing a really fast U-turn to get to their garage area.
Hi, this is Craig Ackerman. I'd like to jump in on Kelly Ackerman's Zoom entry. Speaking to, I think it's Amanda. I think Amanda did a good job of representing the perspective of the developer, but I'm not hearing a real response about the roads and an acknowledgement. Even as I look at this picture that's on the screen, the pond building, which is farthest to the right, there's this believed park over here to the right, as opposed to any planning on perhaps opening an additional road right there, so that the people from the pond building and the people from the Seacus neighborhood had a second way to access out to Sunrise Valley. Likewise, that tiny road behind the Mercer building that Sharon was just speaking about is not a road. it's like a driveway. It would need to be widened somehow, and I don't hear the developer committing to improving the road infrastructure to handle the volumes in an already very unsafe situation. And I don't think anybody on this call would want to be looking back and saying, oh boy, we should have done something before that child, that pedestrian was struck. That's all.
Thank you. So a couple things. We would, I know you said like we're not committing to enhance the roadways. We aren't at this phase because that is not the phase that we're in yet. We're asking if this, is an acceptable land use on this parcel, and we would study the roads and be expected to mitigate our impacts and make sure that the roads can handle the residents that we would be adding at the zoning stage. So we would have the full information, data analysis to look at that point in time. And so I appreciate your perspective, of course, from a safety perspective, and that is important to everyone on this call, hopefully. And your point about that open space in front of the pond building, I believe, we can look into this, but that there is a gas line and a gas easement in that location that I think does prevent like a roadway or something. It does seem like a logical space to provide that, but I think there's some challenges in that area with the gas line and a gas easement in that location.
And I just wanted to add and point in here, and I'll let transportation jump in if they're interested, but the current Reston Plan's grid of streets does point to that, what you call a driveway behind Mercer condominiums as part of that grid of streets network. And so I imagine that at some point in time, there would be improvements to that, potentially in association with this development or future development of this site. I don't know if Tom, if you want to jump in.
Sure, yeah, the grid of streets, the entirety of the Reston TSA's transit station areas have a grid of streets that were put in place 10 or so years ago. And whenever developments come through, we work with the property owners, the developers to make sure that those grids are accommodated. And in this case, I'm looking at the grid. I don't think there is a connection from the pond building kind of diagonally through that green highlighted area. That's not in the grid, but I'm not sure that it would be something that couldn't be considered.
As I understand, there's some intricate stormwater concerns about being able to connect on that pond side.
Yeah. But like I was saying, there is a connection over to the alley behind the condos to the west, and it looks like the applicant is actually looking to go above and beyond our grid of streets and provide a connection around to the hotel, like we were talking about earlier, where you could actually access the traffic signal at the Sheraton. That actually is not part of our grid of streets, but it looks like the applicant's looking to potentially, and I don't want to speak for them, but looking at the map, that blue arrow on the top looks like it might be providing that kind of around the top access. So adding a third connection to Sunrise Valley to hopefully spread the trips out. Not sure if that's answering your question, but
why is it the new development gets the consideration of two additional options when the existing people in these neighborhoods have one? That's the part I don't get. And I understand they're willing to, I hear everything in the future, imagine, all this stuff. What are they willing to commit to before they proceed, before they go down the whatever the meetings are to approve or disapprove a plan? What can they commit to beforehand as to what they're going to do? I mean, if they're saying, okay, they're going to go above and beyond, and I'm looking at I'm not good at maps here, at the egress behind the new construction, okay, commit to it now. You'd help people get votes. If get people on your side. But what I'm hearing is, we'll do a study. We know where that goes. Okay,
unfortunately,
yeah.
The comprehensive plan amendment is the first step, and we look at things conceptually, and they are sharing with us at the plan stage that they do intend to provide that connectivity. But the details of that connectivity would be worked out at the zoning stage, at the site plan stage, which would follow. Once the plan amendment's amended, they're not done. They're actually just one step into the process.
Can I add something? And hopefully people can hear me now. Or
Much better, much better.
Okay. Got rid of those headphones. I do want to indicate though that even at this comprehensive plan stage, when there's a new option added to the plan, we can write conditions. And I would expect that if this were to be added as an option, as an alternative to the current future that somebody could develop, the current, what is that, office, or even, it's actually more housing. It's a mix of housing and some non-residential at the 3.55. This is slightly lower. We could write conditions about that kind of a connection so that when somebody did come in to try to implement that option, they would be expected to meet those conditions. The expectation is they need to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan guidance. And so that's what this stage is. We're asking, is residential the right use? And if it's whatever the residential option is, what are the conditions that would make it work? That's the question we're trying to answer.
And Clara, while we're on this topic, I want to take a minute. I've seen a few questions that kind of hint towards this timing between plan amendment and zoning and project development. And so to reiterate, we are at this very early planning stage. This is our comprehensive plan guidance. And there was also a question about, has this been taken to Reston planning and zoning yet? And so I want to jump back just for a second here. We are scheduled, or this project is scheduled to go before Reston planning and zoning on September 22nd. Information about accessing that meeting, I believe, is on the supervisor's district page. But Amanda is doing a presentation at that meeting for this project, but it is still at the comprehensive plan stage. We don't have a zoning application for this yet. So some of those very specific concepts and conditions that you guys are looking to see in commitments will come with the zoning stage. But we're working on this comprehensive plan specific language
as a first step. Yeah.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, who part of your plan for this involves the secondary egress through the Sheraton parking lot? Who owns that?
It is a private street as part of that development. I don't know who owns or maintains it. I don't know if Amanda, you know.
I don't know specifically the arrangement. It is a private street. We would have to explore all of that as a part of this, which we would, and we would have some coordination. I don't know the answer, and we will ultimately find out the answer. Are there public access easements across all of that? Like how could we make that work in the future? And to somebody's question, to follow up quickly on Clara and Heather's points about the process and somebody's questions about we keep saying we will study it and what will we commit to. We would study it, and then pursuant to that study, we would commit to certain things before the board would decide potentially to approve something here. We would commit to certain transportation improvements and lots of other things.
Amanda, what incentive would all those private businesses, including 2 major hotel chains, what incentive would they have to open up their parking lot to 500 residents of a new development? Just does not make sense.
That's a valid question that we'll have to explore. How do we make that happen? How do we, but we have had some discussions with them as part of, not me specifically, but I know there has been some coordination with them as a part of the development of the point, because that kind of included this site, though there wasn't much change to this site as a part of that zoning approval. So that is something we would certainly explore.
Amanda, could you also check? I don't know if there might have been a proffer in place for the hotel development that requires access. to
Yes,
adjoin.
that's what I was kind of alluding to with the, is there already some public access easements?
Right.
That is possible.
That
And
was
we'll
long
certainly do
before
that.
my time, but hopefully there is. That's a good question.
I just want to clarify, just so I'm sure I'm hearing this. Before, right now we're planning, or we want to know, can we get this lot zoned for this? If the answer is yes, you can get this, you can get it zoned for what you want to build. Before you build, all of that transportation would be, before anything else happens toward the build, the transportation would be worked out. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's when the study would happen, yes.
And just to, what this does is it makes it, if the plan amendment were successful, it would make it possible for somebody to apply for a change in zoning.
Okay.
Which would have to go through the full process of studying all of these elements, having staff review those studies, a lot of back and forth with staff, public hearings before the planning commission, more meetings with you guys, public hearings before the board, before anything would be approved and built. And that's a whole second process after this current process.
And I don't want to diminish the importance of opening the door for a concept like this. The planning stage still matters, and we still want to identify issues. I'm not saying you were doing that, Amanda. It's just I didn't want to sound as if it's not a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal. We're off. We would open the door to an alternative that would be residential, and it would be less intensity than the current plan. But when you live in this area, you're comparing it to that office building that's there. And so that's also an odd thing about a planning study, is that we're trying to replace one possible future that's already in the plan with another possible future.
And I get that. And I know I hear what I hear you, some of you saying is, oh, if this building were at capacity, we would have a lot more traffic. And that is valid. But when you have residences, you get the rush hour effect, right? Residences bring, pond building, it's a constant. I live on the Sika side, so some people get mixed up and their car wanders through our neighborhood to try to get to the pond building. I see that, but it's sort of trickling, right? With the apartment building that we already have at the end, there's a huge, everybody's going to work in the morning, right? A lot of people go to work on a 9 to 5-ish type schedule. So we have a lot of people going out at that time, and the traffic really backs up, and we have all those issues. And then we have that same thing coming in the afternoon of, people nearly plowing into the end of you, even though you have a traffic signal on because you're turning and they're trying to go straight. So that's the issue, when an office building isn't great either, but we bought in here knowing that was there. Putting in more and more people just adds to all these problems. Now we have more children who are going to try to get to the bus stop. Now we have more people trying to get in and get out. And, I just think all of that needs to be looked at when you were going to decide to change the plan.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for that. I do see different sets of questions, and I know we're a little past the hour, but we can try to address. I just noticed with the first set of questions, there are some questions about project benefits, environmental concerns. Let's see. I wanted to talk about that since we've been focusing on traffic and how people move in this space, pedestrian safety. We could probably answer some questions about, what would the community benefit? And something that staff had identified as missing in this area is a park space for this community. And so I'd like to hear if that's important, like if that feels like that's something that's missing, if you know, if that's something that you think would be a benefit to the community. Maybe you're not
trying.
supportive of the density, but I think it would still be important to hear. And I think that would provide some open space as well.
Well, I'll answer that one, Clara. Personally, for me, this is Cheryl. I would be in favor of park space, but I don't think, wow, this is an interesting apartment building plan. I don't think it actually does show a lot of park space. I think it shows, you know, some courtyard areas. And, you know, in fact, it's less park space that's over on our neighbor's property at Sunrise Square, and that's not even very big. So I'm not sure, for me personally, I think that last piece is far too close to the townhouses. And am I gonna say that means the density is too high? Yeah, probably. So that's kind of my opinion. And I just want to follow up. I had one last question before we jump off. What is the number of units and what's the percentage of ADUs? Maybe Amanda knows that.
325 units.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if we're looking at 325 units and we're again at the concept phase, so like it's kind of a range of what would the units potentially be. If it's 325, we would likely be, there is a kind of sliding scale of the WDU, you know, expectations. And so we'd probably be in the 40 to 50 range of the number of workforce housing units.
That's a big percentage. Okay, thank you.
And somebody
Not
else,
40%, not 40%, 40 to 50 units.
I get it. Yeah.
Okay.
okay. Okay, and then somebody asked, when would the project start? When is the expected completion date? I'm assuming you don't have an answer to that because this is still not an idea that's in the comprehensive plan. You would need to get approval for rezoning, then get approval for site plan, and then get your other permits to, like, it assumes a lot of successful steps to get to that. But Amanda, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're too early to know when that would be expected. You know, the hope and plan is to get through this stage and then, you know, soon after prepare a zoning application like we've been talking about, which would take, you know, probably about a year. And then there's a site plan process that follows that. So it's a few years out. But
Somebody
no
asked
specifics
about the unused bocce court and potential relocation of the bike share station. And I guess
So
wondering-
the bocce court on this site here, that like some of that park space that's over here where the office building is. I
and
think that's the
somebody, yeah,
that would all be redeveloped, like as a part of this, that park space would all be redeveloped. And the idea, the hope is to really provide more usable, high quality, you know, public recreation type facilities in this space that really would benefit everyone. So, you know, if it's obvious, if it's not a bocce court, that's not what's being used, we would welcome feedback on what would be used that would benefit the community here.
and there were more comments about parking and pedestrian safety and congestion. And I know we've talked about it. There's probably more we could say, but I'm just trying to scan through the comments. There's a question. Go ahead.
Sorry, I may have missed it. With regards, assuming this is planned, it's going to get built. Are the tenants there going to have parking, or are they going to have to pay for it? I thought I heard that asked earlier, and I didn't hear the answer. So if we could hear, I don't see her up. What her? Yeah.
Amanda, that would be Amanda.
Yes.
Is the plan to provide the tenants with free parking, or are you going to make them pay?
So I don't have the exact detail of, so Stewart, one thing to point out, Stewart Investment Partners is not a developer per se. They own mostly, you know, office buildings, and they do, you know, medical office buildings, fill those office buildings. And this one is obviously struggling, given the location. And so the idea here is there something else that can be done? So we would know more details about that, but I hear the concern about the parking in the adjacent apartment building that folks aren't paying for, so they're not using. So that would certainly be something that, and it's the kind of feedback that we take as we would potentially go to a step 2. And we'll look into that in terms of how the parking functions with the tenants. I do think typically it is a, you know, it is part of the fee to pay for the parking, but we would have plenty of parking. And if we go back and forth on the parking issue, there is an opportunity for kind of creative solutions that we can incorporate in the proffers I was mentioning earlier to make sure that that parking problem does not occur in this building like it's occurring in the adjacent building.
There's a question about at the time that 3.55 was established in the plan, I'm assuming, were the townhomes present? And Heather, you had both looked at the history. I believe the answer is no. At least when that first entitlement for 3.55 FAR, that the townhomes were definitely not there. Is that correct, Heather and Amanda? That's correct. Yeah.
Correct. None of the existing residential was there when the 3.55 was incorporated into the plan. It was an office park at the time.
And the comment is that now that the area has transitioned to be more residential, that changes the nature of the area. And that's, I think staff would agree, it's become a neighborhood. And that's what we need to consider when we're evaluating this proposal.
But I hear everybody going back to that 3.55 FAR, and if it's 2 point something, well, that's better. Well, the whole thing is too much for that amount of space. Again, just not enough ways in and out.
Somebody asked, is the land considered for park space? If the question's assuming, like, can the land be, the county or somebody would need to buy this to make this a park space? So that's really a question for the developer. Like, I'm assuming they're not in the business of developing park space. But if the question is, would the open space be considered park space or public park, that is the intention, that they provide park space that's designed to be usable for everybody in the neighborhood, not just the new residents.
So my question, thank you, Clara. My question more or less was, if this is considered to be entirely too much for this space, would the developer consider, now understanding that it would have to be sold to someone who could then develop it into park space? If we're all realizing that this is absurd, it's entirely too much for this, to put this here with the density, even if it's lower than 355. So that was the basis of my question. I was looking for clarification because you had brought up park space earlier, so I wasn't sure if you're referring to the little green spaces, which actually will end up being for dogs and their waste, which is pretty much every green piece of grass that we have. That's basically what it is. So no, it's not going to be used like everybody's thinking it is. It'll just be for the doggies, which of course we all love our dog. Thank you.
And I will tell you that it's a frequent topic of discussion with staff is how much of this space could actually be designed to feel like a public park space, to be usable, how much of it will feel like a private courtyard, how much of it feels like just leftover green space that wouldn't be used or feel like, sorry, I'm trying to keep up. Quick parking note. Okay, so that was a note about the adjacent underused parking lot. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I think this comment is that there are about 20 to 30 cars that park in the current surface parking lot, and that once that goes away, then that exacerbates an already problematic shortage of parking spaces that people are describing.
No wonder to park there.
Are there plans for mature trees on Payson's Way to add privacy between the townhomes and new residential building?
That is certainly something we would look at, what type of trees would go there and what type of landscaping would be appropriate. We'd be balancing that with trying to provide usable space for the community, usable park space for the community in that area, but that is certainly something we would consider. And I appreciate that feedback.
And the last question in the chat, Amanda, for you is, when did your client purchase the property?
They purchased the property earlier this year. I did work for many years with the previous owners of the property as well. Bruce and Neil, who owned the property and had a law firm in the building and still do on options for redeveloping this building as it has continued to have, growing vacancy.
Okay. And I appreciate the community coming together and trying to organize their questions ahead of the meeting and sharing those with us. And if there's any other information from that survey that you conducted that you could share with staff, we could also share that with Amanda. And I'm sure the supervisor's office, if they haven't already received it, would be interested in reading that material. Is there some other issue that I think people have identified the most important issues to them, but if there's anything else that people wanted to say before we wrap up this meeting?
Just one last thing that came to mind. Someone mentioned environmental stuff. So that's you, and also that building was built in I think the 70s or the 80s, and
Yeah.
which anyone who's lived here that long, I can admit I have, knows that construction wasn't as, how do I say, environmentally friendly, nor there weren't the inspections, there wasn't all this stuff done back then. What happens when they rip that building down? I'm sure they've done more. I'm just curious. Do they do any environmental analysis of the building itself? Is there asbestos in it? It had I think it had some medical use, during those early years when you didn't have to properly dispose of things, is there an impact there? That's all. It just came to mind. And is that being considered? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of my lane. We would definitely want to require that. Full asbestos testing, full phase 1 and 2s if required. That's a definite point. And any hazards would need to be remediated before the building is raised. So, Amanda, I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah, and there are lots of existing requirements for how those kind of things are handled. Not necessarily my direct purview of how, what those are as terms of pulling the building down and redeveloping it, but we can certainly get those details, and I appreciate the feedback.
Well, Heather shared her contact information. It's on the screen again, as well as her phone number. I noticed that's your direct line office number. So you would reach her directly. If you think of something after the meeting, something else you want to make sure staff has, please feel free to contact Heather. She'll be able to share that with all of the reviewers of this plan amendment. Great. So I think with that, perhaps we can close the meeting. Yeah. Okay, great. And the information is shared again for updates on next steps for the plan amendment. And again, feel free to contact Heather if you're not seeing any updates. Yeah, we appreciate you joining us tonight and taking the time really to tell us about your community and tell us what's important to you and to share your concerns.
Yes, thank you all very much.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you. Great. All right, I think we can close the meeting.
All right, I'm trying to find the thing to stop the recording.